Hi, and thank you for joining us for another episode of BSPN. I'm Brandon Corey, here with David Fixler and Josh Goldberg. And right now is one of my favorite times of the year for sports. It's basically Christmas for Adam Schefter right now. I think he's been on his phone nonstop since last night. We've got updates coming in nonstop from NFL free agency. Big name players moving. So we're going to hit on all the big ones. The first big one I thought was Brandon Marshall. Doesn't leave New York, but signs with the new team, the New York Giants. So now that wide receiver trio in New York is looking pretty darn good. Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, and Sterling Shepard now that Cruz is gone. And what it essentially works out to, in my mind, they cut Cruz, they save about $7 million in cap space. They signed Brandon Marshall for 2 year, $12 million. They basically got Brandon Marshall for cheaper and got rid of Cruz.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about this move?
I think it's great. As you said, the receiving trio is probably the best in the NFL right now with those three. Then again, wide receivers are only as good as the quarterback that's throwing to him. Eli's good, but can he live up to the pressure? So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Eli seems like a guy to me who's going to throw, regardless of who you put out there at wide receivers. He's going to make big plays, but he's also going to throw, 15 to 20 interceptions.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you put out there. But that offense is definitely going to be pretty prolific. My main concern with the move is Giants don't have a lot of cap space. Not that they paid a lot for Marshall, but it doesn't address a position of need. It probably addresses the position they needed the least. So do you think that could cause problems moving forward? I mean, they have holes at linebacker, on the O-line, at running back mainly. So do you think this was the best move that the Giants could have made?
Yeah, it's a good point that, as with any team, obviously money is a big area that is going to impact the way decisions are made in the offseason especially. I think given the fact that that they just, got rid of Cruz, that definitely allowed them some more flexibility with options for who to go after, and I think it might have been worth potentially taking a little bit of hit on the cap space side for Marshall, given his his veteran experience and what he could add to the Giants team, especially through all the different experiences he's had with the Bears and the Jets. So while it does impact the the cap space and the financial areas for the Giants, I think it was a good move for them.
I think so too, and also what seems to be people's main concern from what I've seen on social media. Off the field problems with Marshall were definitely concerned earlier in his career. When he was on the Dolphins, when he was on the Bears, people called him a locker room cancer. But do you guys think that's going to impact the team at all? Maybe a personality clash with Odell Beckham. Both of them have been number one wide receivers their whole career, basically. So do you think that could cause any problems?
Maybe, a little bit. I see, a little clash possibly in the future, but I think it might also go kind of like opposite of that, where they're both kind of, crazy, a little, energetic, a little, do some things that maybe not everybody likes, but maybe that's, something that they can bond over and kind of work together as a team. I think both players want to, be on a Super Bowl team. They want to do well, and they're going to just sacrifice, so that they can do that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess my last question on Brandon Marshall, does this make the Giants more of a contender than they were last year?
Yeah, I definitely think it makes them more of a contender. We saw how much Cruz played last year, who, let's say, we might see as Marshall filling in for Cruz's spot this year. And Cruz was injured for part of the year and then came back and made like a couple of great plays and then he was gone. So I think Marshall being there will, as David mentioned, I think having Beckham as like a number one and Marshall as a very strong number two wide receiver will allow Manning a lot more flexibility in his his ability to make big plays, and I think that will at least help the Giants' chances of making a better run this season.
Absolutely. I would definitely say it's an upgrade over Cruz. A down year for Marshall last year, but you could have absolutely blamed that on the team situation, on the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
So now staying in the NFC East, move to the Cowboys. Obviously last year they were sold on Dak Prescott. He is their QB of the future, and now they have Tony Romo. The latest reports say he's either going to be traded or released, originally released and now traded. So what teams do you think would be the best fits for Tony Romo?
Obviously, that veteran experience, might work well and like a team that's that needs that, solid, QB. I mean, the Browns, maybe, I don't know. He might not want to go to the Browns just got Osweiler, so that's not, a thing anymore.
They might be not sold on him.
Right. But yeah, he needs to go to a team that has the wide receivers, but not the quarterback for it. I'm not sure which one.
The Browns, to me, just because they seem so far away from contending, don't seem like a great place for Tony Romo.
Maybe not.
In my eyes, the best spot would be the Denver Broncos. John Elway has some experience with Romo. I think that would definitely be a smart move to bring him in. It's just a matter of, if they want to trade for him, how much is it going to be? How much are they going to have to give up? But as far as a contender, I think that would be a great fit because Romo could come right in, give him a chance to win for 1, maybe 2 years. It's hard to say how much he has left after 2 back surgeries. He's definitely, on the wrong side of 30. But also the Texans, in my eyes, were a good fit, and obviously they just traded Brock Osweiler. So do you see him maybe finding success on the Texans if they go after him?
Yeah, I mean, the Texans are another team, kind of like the Broncos, where I think he could have a more immediate impact if he were to join them. I think similarly between the Texans and the Broncos, on both teams there are great wide receivers, which could kind of make his life easier if he transitions. So for to the Texans, he's got Hopkins and the guy who emerged last year, forgetting his name at the moment, but.
Will Fuller?
Yeah, yep, Will Fuller.
Also, Braxton Miller they drafted, but there is talent at wide receiver there. Yeah. Both Broncos and Texans have very strong defenses as well.
Yeah.
Bringing in a centerpiece like Romo, temporary obviously could give them the push they need to make a Super Bowl run, kind of like we saw with the Broncos and Peyton Manning. But moving on, Tony Jefferson. Safety, he's one of the older safeties in the league, but signs with the Ravens, who already had potentially the top safety in the league in Eric Weddle. Now have Tony Jefferson and Eric Weddle on a defense that already was very good last year. So you guys think that this defense could be enough to push the Ravens into the playoffs?
Possibly. I mean, I think they, defense, as the saying goes, sometimes defense does win championships, and they proved that in 2004. Their team was basically just defense, and that sometimes works. I think they just got a new running back. Also,
and Kenneth Dixon,
who
happens to be suspended for the first 4 games of next year. Again, lots of breaking news coming out. But very talented. We saw it in short periods last year. Kind of took over that starting role from Forsett.
Danny Woodhead, I think, also he's with the Ravens. Yeah, so they don't really, they could deal with having Joe Flacco. He's okay, but if they have the running game and they can just score their touchdowns through that, and their defense is super solid. I mean, that's a winning combo in my opinion.
Of course, do you agree, Josh?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you guys. I think defense is very important, but I think the real test is going to be how great Flacco is this year with with his pieces and how well he can lead his offense.
Yeah, and we've seen it before. One Super Bowl MVP. Maybe he can find another one later in his career. Talking about defense, a team that's made some big moves on defense, not only this year but last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been loaded with cap space. They come out and sign potentially the top free agent cornerback. The top 2 were Stephon Gilmore and A.J. Bouye. Jaguars go out and get A.J. Bouye a year after drafting Jalen Ramsey, I believe number 5 overall, and also signed Calais Campbell. Spent 9 years on the Cardinals, was top interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Do you think that the Jaguars defense is finally going to show some progress?
Possibly. I mean, Bortles had proven himself, or at least gotten better, in the past few years. So that defense really was the missing piece, and so possibly, I mean, a good couple veterans on their team definitely could help.
What about you, Josh? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, obviously in terms of defense, having a great cornerback is going to help a lot, and especially with the Jaguars where, they're performance has been pretty weak the past couple of years in terms of defense. I think this definitely provides a huge step up.
Yeah, two great coverage cornerbacks in Jalen Ramsey, who can develop into a top cornerback in the NFL. AJ Bouye, kind of a breakout player this year, kind of struggled his first few years and then really had a great year with Houston. So we'll see if he lives up to that contract. We've seen that before where, one great year, get a big contract, and then don't live up to it. But I definitely think the Jaguars could take a big step forward. The offense we already know is there.
Yep.
A lot of great pieces on offense, great receivers. So we might finally see the Jaguars, claw themselves back.
Jacksonville
back
Jaguars?
in the playoffs. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a while. But it would definitely be nice to see.
Yeah.
Another big move, Deshaun Jackson has been linked to a couple teams, maybe coming back to Philly, but the Bucs have been making a strong push for him, and they signed him. He'll be playing as the deep threat opposite of Mike Evans.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this move?
I think it's great. I think Jameis Winston, overall, I think he's kind of an underrated quarterback. I mean, people know he's good, but he hasn't, exactly proven himself at the NFL level. And I think that's partially because it's really only been Mike Evans, he's had to throw to some so-so tight ends, other receiving core that hasn't been, as stellar, as some other teams. So I think, having those two kind of good wide receivers on the field at the same time should really open up the options for Jameis.
Definitely two really good deep threats. What do you think about them, Josh?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of almost like what the Giants just did, where they got Marshall, so they get, you have Odell Beckham as a great one, and then Marshall's as a good two, and you have the same sort of thing now. Evans as an excellent one for the Bucs, and then Jackson can slide right in as a great number two for them. So I think that definitely puts them in a better spot as well.
Absolutely. Cameron Brate also was a solid receiving threat. So the offense is definitely not what I would worry about for the Buccaneers. My main concern, I guess, would be can Winston throw the deep ball when it's not Mike Evans?
Yeah.
Because, with Mike Evans, you have a guy who's huge, who can jump, who can, get the ball at the catch point over just about any cornerback. That's not who Deshaun Jackson is. Winston's got to place the ball better. So I think it's going to be a big test for Jameis Winston as well. Kind of like a prove it year, how much of a franchise quarterback is he going to be? Is he going to be a star, or is he going to be a guy who they just kind of move along with? But I definitely think he's going to be a good quarterback. It's just a matter of how good, and I think this year, he has a chance to prove it.
Yeah.
Moving on, the Patriots, Super Bowl champion Patriots, are making moves in free agency. They come out and sign Stephon Gilmore, the other big cornerback in free agency. And then just recently, a couple hours ago, they trade for Coney Ealy. They moved back from late in the second round to early in the third round. So what do you guys think about what the Patriots are doing so far?
I mean, I think that's, as some of these other teams like the Jaguars are doing, that's a good step up on defense. I think they have Malcolm Butler, who's another great cornerback.
Absolutely.
So when you team him up with Stephon Gilmore, the Patriots' offense is already, arguably the best in the NFL. So you team that up with an excellent defense, and that's just setting them up for another great season, in my opinion.
Yeah, the defense really took a big step forward this year, I thought, to go along with the offense. Brady, it doesn't matter who you put out there, receiver, he's gonna make them better. So the defense is an area where if they can step up, this team can obviously go as far as they want, and they showed that last year. I think Malcolm Butler and Stephon Gilmore could be a really good cornerback duo. It's like we saw with the Jaguars, like we see with some other teams with two really good cornerbacks. I guess my main concern would be maybe Malcolm Butler isn't there. Recently there's been rumors Brandon Cooks might be on the way out in New Orleans, and Malcolm Butler has been a potential trade piece, as well as the 32nd pick in the draft for the Patriots, and the Titans as well are going after Brandon Cooks. So first off, do you guys think the Saints are doing the right thing by shopping Brandon Cooks?
I mean, the Saints have, had a perennial offense for years. I mean, they've been very good at that. Their defense has been pretty weak. That's one of their weaker points. They also had the emergence of, I think it was Coleman this year, Michael Coleman, the rookie, who really burst onto the scene and took over as a wide receiver. I would know because Cooks was my fantasy wide receiver, and obviously Michael Thomas took over.
Brandon Coleman as well. Two very good young receivers. But Brandon Cooks as well is a very young, good receiver. He's proven himself. Most people think the reason he's gone is because, or the reason he might go is because, he been greedy. He wants more targets.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, do you think that the Patriots or the Titans might be a better fit for Brandon Cooks?
I don't know. I mean, the Patriots have some good receiving, core right now with Edelman and with Amendola and
Gronk, obviously.
Yeah,
Chris
Gronk,
Hogan.
is still there, and Chris Hogan. I mean, I think they have an established good wide receiver and tight ends and stuff like that, and even James White as a running back, who can catch the ball real well. I mean, I think Brandon Cooks, if they get the right trade, then maybe it's okay. But I think the Titans might be a little bit better. I mean, Mariota still needs to get some good targets. He's a good quarterback. He just sometimes it's just the people that he's throwing to aren't just as good as they need to be.
Kendall Wright's been solid. Rashard Matthews has improved, but he doesn't really have that number one guy. And
Right.
Cooks could be that. I actually agree 100%. That's why I think the Titans are a better fit. If he wants more targets, the Patriots is not the place where he's going to get them.
Yeah.
With so much depth at wide receiver, with Gronk there as always. So I definitely like the Titans as a better landing spot for Cooks. Moving on to a new team, the Cleveland Browns won one game or 2 games last year? One game.
Yeah, I think one.
So they have a lot of cap space right now, and they've been making moves, mainly on their offensive line, right on the interior. They now have every position addressed, I think, except for right tackle. They signed the center J.C. Treader. They gave Kevin Zeitler the most money that a guard has ever gotten. He's been a standout on the Bengals for years. They also extended their guard Joel Bitonio, and they still have Joe Thomas, who's probably the best left tackle in the NFL.
Right.
Arguably Joe Thomas or Tyron Smith is there too, but he's been consistently one of the best in the NFL for years. Do you think this is the right strategy, I guess, for the Browns moving forward?
I think so. I mean, sometimes I think the offensive line is a underrated part of a good offense. Sometimes, it's like with Tom Brady, he works well partially because his offensive line is so solid and they can protect him so well. And, it's not only just about having that. So, if they can get that good front line and then kind of work towards getting a good quarterback, then I think that might be the way to go.
The quarterback position obviously has always been a position in need for the Browns, and we'll see if they can finally address it this year. I personally like it because I think Hugh Jackson as a coach has been very run-focused. We saw him in Cincinnati with Bernard and Hill. That's where he likes to run his offense through. Cincinnati's always had a solid O-line, and I think I agree with the move a lot. So build on the O-line. You have Crowell back there, and I think he's a very solid running back. I think you can build around that O-line, kind of like the Cowboys do. But moving on back to the NFC East. As an Eagles fan, the Eagles have made a lot of moves recently. So they released Connor Barwin to free up some cap space. They signed Torrey Smith for 3 years, $15 million, and then they come and sign the biggest free agent wide receiver in Alshon Jeffrey to a 1-year deal for $14 million. So what do you guys think about what the Eagles are doing so far?
Well, it's definitely showing a lot of possible trust in Carson Wentz and that he's going to be able to match up well with these wide receivers. But honestly, in my opinion, I think it's a great move. I think he's shown a lot of confidence last year, starting off, and I think he will be able to develop some chemistry pretty quickly with these wide receivers, and especially in a busy NFC East, with all the moves that the Giants are doing and the other teams there as well. I think this will give them a great chance to compete.
Yeah, we'll talk about the wide receivers in the NFC East next because they're getting really good. But I guess the goal last offseason for the Eagles was we need a quarterback. So they make some moves. They get Carson Wentz, and they're sold on him. Ups and downs last season, but they are still sold on him. And their goal this offseason, build around Carson Wentz. The receivers last year, it doesn't get much worse than on the outside having Nelson Aguilar and Dorial Green-Beckham. Jordan Matthews is obviously still there. He's been a slot receiver most of his career, and that's where he's going to stay. So that's why I like the move so much. On the outside, you have Torrey Smith, who's a deep threat who struggled in San Francisco. But back when he was on the Ravens, it seems like a while ago now, he was one of the better deep threats in the NFL. And then Alshon Jeffrey, obviously, top wide receiver on the market. Very good. Concerns with PEDs. Had a 4-game suspension last year, and as well as injuries, he's been banged up here and there. Had 2 seasons, I believe, where he played 16 full games. So do you have any concerns, I guess, with Torrey Smith, not bouncing back, Alshon Jeffrey in any way?
I mean, I kind of view, the Eagles as sort of in a rebuilding stage. And so, Alshon Jeffrey is, kind of like with a 1-year deal, it allows them to kind of like see how it is,
Right.
put somebody who's really good at, at a receiver, or at least in the past, in front of Wentz, and really see how well that goes, and kind of, build their offense through, them. I think it could work out, but if it doesn't, they're building. Wentz is a young guy. But the Eagles are really, happy with him. So, whatever happens, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll definitely see. It's kind of like a 1-year wait-and-see deal. And he wants to prove himself as well. He turned down an offer for more money, more security with the Vikings, so he could come to Philly and play with Carson Wentz and kind of prove himself. Because, he wouldn't have gotten as much money as he could have if he has a breakout season this year. So he's betting on himself. He's betting on the Eagles. Personally, I like the confidence and I like the move. But now moving back to the NFC East, or talking about the NFC East as a whole, the Redskins also just recently signed, within like the last hour, they signed Terrell Pryor. So now let's talk about the receivers in the NFC East. The Giants, Odell Beckham, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. Dallas still has Dez and Cole Beasley, who improved a lot last year. Washington now loses Deshaun Jackson, loses Pierre Garçon, adds Terrell Pryor, and they have a great young receiver in Jamison Crowder. Now Philly with Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, and Jordan Matthews in the slot. What do you guys think it's going to be like watching the NFC East games next year?
Could be very high scoring. I mean, not a lot of those teams have great defenses. So, it could seem, if those wide receivers, do what they're supposed to do, it could be very entertaining to watch. I mean, who doesn't like to see, big touchdowns, long, deep passes? So I'm excited.
Absolutely. The Giants, I think, are the only team right now who has the cornerbacks, the defensive backs to really cover any of these teams.
Yeah.
What about you, Josh? What do you think this division is going to look like?
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I think it's going to be pretty offensive. I mean, I think for the Redskins, it's hard to compete with other teams like that. We've seen in other sports where one division has just become so intense that the other teams need to, try to make moves to catch up with them. And I think, this is a good attempt to do that for the Redskins. I don't really know how strong it's going to be, but I think it's going to be an exciting division to watch next year.
Absolutely. The Redskins might be the one team I think aren't moving in the right direction. They just fired their GM, obviously for non-football related reasons. But also with Kirk Cousins, he doesn't want to be in Washington. He will stay in Washington. It's not really a choice for him. He asked for a trade. They won't give it to him, it seems. And he'll be playing on another franchise tag this year. So I don't know if Washington's really going to be all in this year, like they may have been last year. So, that might be a team that falls back down to the bottom of the division like we've seen in recent years.
Yeah.
Every other team, I think, is moving in the right direction. Dallas, obviously, was great last year, and they have the 2 rookies, the offensive line. Everything seems to be set for them. The Giants, the defense looked a lot better, and now have one of the best receiving corps in the NFL. And then Philly, obviously, building around Wentz, could start to make a move forward. So definitely will be a fun division to watch. A lot of personalities there.
Yeah.
Definitely could be a lot of fun action there. Moving on back to the Browns, there was a big trade that we didn't talk about. It's kind of an unprecedented trade. The Texans trade Brock Osweiler, a phenomenal bust of a free agent signing. Some of these guys might end up being that next year, but they basically dump his salary to the Cleveland Browns, who can take on his salary, and they give up a 2nd-round pick to do it, and then I swap like 4th and 6th-round picks. So who do you think wins out of this trade, I guess?
I tend to go with just the Browns have horrible luck. They try to get like these guys all the time, and it looks like this guy he has promise, and then he just kind of like fails. As much as I want to see the Browns doing well, with the new offensive line, maybe Osweiler does well. That's what they basically had when he was with the Broncos. When Denver was really good, when he was playing with them. So maybe, the Browns end up doing well. But overall, Texans, because they dumped that salary, could end up just, doing better.
Yeah,
in
if the
long
Texans
game.
land Romo, they might definitely seem like
Yeah.
the winner if they make a run. The Browns have always had this strategy of load up on draft picks, build through the draft. I kind of like the Philadelphia 76ers. Trust the
Right,
process.
right. Yeah, trust the process.
But I guess it doesn't matter how many draft picks you get if you don't know who to draft and you can't develop those players.
Yeah.
I think player development is probably the area, because every player that they draft has talent. It's just you have to be able to develop that. Brock Osweiler, do you think he's even going to stay with the Browns? I mean, there's talks that they're going to release him or trade him. I don't even think they want him. They just wanted the second round pick and to take on that salary.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, after seeing what happened to Osweiler when he was with the Texans and the amount of success which he didn't have, the way it went, I don't really feel like going to the Browns is going to help increase that success for him. But I agree. I think there might be sort of some action that might be coming up for the Browns once he gets there. But I just don't see things getting any better for him with the team.
I just think the Browns with Brock Osweiler at quarterback after seeing last year couldn't end any worse. We'll see how it works out. If they trade him and get another draft pick, maybe they seem like the winner here. They basically are buying draft picks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a long-term thing. We won't know who wins this deal for a couple of years. So that's all of our main free agency moves so far. Obviously, they're coming in nonstop. We'll see how everything works out. Definitely a lot of big moves coming up. There always is. We have one game pick this week. This Saturday, America East game. Binghamton, unfortunately, will not be represented in March Madness. But Vermont and Albany are playing this Saturday. Vermont has been very dominant in the America East this year. Albany, year after year, has been a top contender. Who do you think punches the ticket to March Madness?
I'm going to hedge my bets on Vermont in this game. Vermont dominated this year in the America East. They, I believe, went 28-5 or 6.
Five losses, I believe.
5 losses, and I think they were undefeated in the conference in the America East, which is incredible. I mean, I know the America East is not the best conference out there in NCAA basketball. There are much better divisions, but either way, that's still very impressive. And I think while Albany might be a good test for them, I think that they've played them enough times where they should be able to handle their weak points and come out on top.
Yep, absolutely, and I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with Vermont.